afternoon, financial professionals. I'm Steve Walker, Vice President of Institutional Accounts here at E4 Insurance Services, welcoming you to the Brew, building relationships every week. Thanks for tuning in today. For those of you joining the Brew for the first time, welcome. We like to start the Brewcast by celebrating today's national days. And for today, we have National Let's Laugh Day, National Chocolate Caramel Day, and National Proposal Day. So hopefully you don't get some chocolate caramel, go and propose, and get laughed at. That would be a bad combination, but all three on their own are definitely good. On today's Brew, I've asked Brady Serold, E4's Senior Vice President of Disability Income, to join me in discussing how a business can protect themselves against the loss of a key employee and what we think of as the missing piece. We encourage you to use the chat box or raise a hand to ask questions. Also, all attendees are in a drawing for a CE voucher and Starbucks gift card, and we'll be announcing the winner at the end. So thanks for tuning in. Brady, thanks for joining. As we get rolling here, last week Chris Henderson joined us and did a great job of really starting the conversation on key person coverage. It really focused on the life insurance, and Chris talked on a little bit on the key person DI side. But as you and I have talked and we share with our advisors, really that missing piece of key person oftentimes is, what if they become too sick or too hurt and can't work from a disability standpoint? So from your experience, from your chair experience working with not only employers and advisors, but really tell us a little bit about your thoughts of really how that missing piece of protecting against that risk of disablement or disability from a key person standpoint. How does that play out? I'll let you take it from there for now.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and welcome everyone. Again, Chris mentioned, again, when a key employee dies, you can have the life insurance to help the employer either recruit somebody or be able to pay somebody who who was handling something else. So again, the life insurance side, but again, where's the money going to come from the disability side? And you have those same concerns if a key employee leaves, Steve, and leaves because they become too sick or hurt and can't work. So what is the company going to do? Where's the money going to come from? I mean, the recruiting world's tough today. So how's the company going to have the funds to pay to get somebody else? And that's really where the key person disability comes in. And it's typically either one of two things. It's a elimination period of 90 days typically, and they'll pay for a year, and that pays the company back. That has nothing to do with the employee. That's straight funds coming to the company to help compensate for that disabled employee. There's also a lump sum feature that at the end, if they're out for a certain period of time, typically a year, where the company can get a chunk of change to then go out and spend the money on recruiting, have a retention bonus. Maybe you have to move somebody to Fargo, North Dakota when you're expecting 12 inches of snow. Might be a little harder to recruit that guy from Fort Lauderdale to come to Fargo.
But 8 to 12 inches to be precise.
We'll just put it on the high side. Got to be prepared for the worst, right? So that's what we kind of do. Got to prepare for the worst. So that's kind of, what does the employer do? But, again, the screen has, the disability of a key employee, really, where we come into it is kind of the other side of it. As an employer, if an employee gets disabled, and let's just say you were a small business and you started with, 5 employees, and over time you've now grown and now you have 25 employees. That employee who was there with you from the beginning, they're not an owner, but you treat them like family. From an employer standpoint, if something happens to them, how am I going to continue to pay that person's salary? Yep. Can I? What are we going to do? And then obviously from an employee standpoint, they start thinking is, okay, how am I going to continue to support myself and my family? Again, if they've done the disability planning, personally, but most people don't have anything. They have a false sense that workers' comp or Social Security are going to take care of them. But the
really
truth
separate.
is,
so really separate here in the qualified sick pay plans. it's not so much of the liquidity event coming to the business, like you touched on, to help recruit and replace the duties and the individual. It's more along the lines of, um, like you said, the business becomes family. Somebody becomes hurt. Hey, I didn't plan good enough. Can you still keep paying me? I mean, maybe touch on a little bit, even to that point. Maybe we'll hear in a second, Brady. But is that even legal? Can an employer continue to pay an employee that's sick and hurt and not actually working?
Well, again, Steve, you can do anything you want to do. I mean, it's just the question: are there certain organizations like the Internal Revenue Service who have an issue with it? Definitely. And how could it potentially affect the business? And that's kind of what we're going to go through. So, you kind of go, really the available options. I mean, you don't have a plan. You have a qualified sick pay plan that's self-funded, and then you have a qualified sick pay plan that's insured. So, those are really your three options. And, as an advisor, how are you going to help them choose? So the first one, you kind of take a look at, what happens if you don't have a plan? And again, this is most companies who they just don't know. Again, and if I was the person who owned the business and I had the right hand person there for 15 years and they were there from the beginning, him or her, if something happened to them, even in the short run, and I don't have insurance on the side, I want to pay them. I mean, again, I want to try to keep them because if they're a key to my organization, I want them to come back. And again, if they can't physically recover because they're financially hurting, you're get a problem. I mean, the likelihood they're going to come back is slim to none, and then the business is an even worse standpoint. So again, if you have no plan and you decide to pay them, you can't deduct it from a tax standpoint. It is not considered wages. They're considered ad hoc payments. So there was a big court case, Supreme Court case that came out in the early 60s, the Chisholm Ice Cream Company. And, the owner of the C Corp became disabled and they paid him for 4 years his normal wages and took it as deductions. And when they came out and settled the estate, the company got in trouble with the IRS because they falsely reported deductions on it. And then so there were taxes, penalties, interest, and it also affected the estate because he was being paid income that was taxed differently. So that's kind of where that loss of tax deduction becomes a big thing. And a lot of businesses don't know that. Again, you have the loss of productivity. You're paying for an employee that isn't working. So how is that valuable to the business? Employee morale. Again, they don't know if they're getting paid, when they're getting paid. Again, the worst thing that happened is all of a sudden you come back and somebody becomes disabled and, pardon me, they find out they have nothing. Well, then what do you do? Again, sometimes the employer tries to help them out, but again, can they? Again, we've already said that they can't legally do that. Again, you could become part of a lawsuit from a disgruntled employee. The other part is if you continue salary for one person, you may have set a precedent for all other employees, even though that's not your intention. And depending upon the size of your organization, that could be a pretty big liability. So again, you kind of look at all the issues here, and you really can't afford not to have a plan.
Yep.
So any thoughts on that, Steve? Have you seen any businesses come to you and want to pay employees in the past?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, it's ironic, over the last couple 2 or 3 weeks, I've probably had just as many handful of these conversations that I've had in my entire career. So it's kind of ironic. You start thinking about something and all of a sudden it becomes a reality. So yeah, it's definitely, hey, what if this happens? Well, we're just going to keep paying them.
Yep.
All right. Well, yeah. And going through going through that side, you can't, the IRS, you don't want the IRS on your bad side. You want to make sure you're doing things right. And really, I think, this qualified sick pay plan that you're going to touch on here, Brady, it's I think of it as kind of similar to a buy-sell agreement where it's okay, you've got a plan of, we talked on the buy-sell last month. Qualified sick pay plan is the same thing. You can put the plan in place, and then ultimately the decision of the business is, am I going to fund it or am I not? am I gonna transfer some of that risk? So I know that you're gonna touch on that here a little bit as far as kind of what it is, and then funded versus non-funded. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, and really it's just a simple legal document, that describes who's included in it, and the employer can choose, as long as you have a clearly defined class, how much they're paid, when the benefits are going to start, and how long the payments are going to last. I mean, it's pretty simple. Most of the carriers have some templates that are out there that we can use, and again, if people have questions and we bring these up to us, we can help provide those. And then again, there's that formal plan, and basically it's as simple as putting in their corporate resolution. Yeah, at an annual meeting or a quarterly meeting, hey, we're adopting this plan. And then the last one, which is also important, it must be communicated in writing to the covered employees. So again, once you have the legal document, it's enacted into your business resolution, and you tell the people the plan's in place. So then, really, where it comes down to is it good to have a self-funded plan or not? So again, you have it in writing, it's communicated. Again, compensation paid is tax deductible because you now have a formally written plan, so you can tax deduct those wages that you're paying to the employee as a business expense. But here's the problem: claim determination, it's left up to the employer. How many small employers are really qualified to determine claim eligibility of an employee?
Not many,
Not
if
many.
any.
Again, and then you set up, you know, subjectivity versus objectivity. Again, one person, another person, well, I believe Steve, but I don't believe Brady. They have the same condition, but Brady's just a lazy worker and I'm not going to pay him. Okay, well, now you set a precedent. He has the same condition as me and I'm not getting paid. Again, sets yourself up for lawsuits
Yep.
and come into that disgruntled employee. The other part is in this side, you'll be tried in federal court. From a damage standpoint, monetary losses, because again, you'd have a compliant ERISA plan within your qualified sick pay plan. The other part is it does, which is good, the financial accounting standards 112, which talks about reserving for benefits. It does put the company in compliance with that. However, what happens is they have to account for that on their balance sheet. So any liability that could potentially be paid out in the future has to be accounted for on your balance sheet from an organization. So if you have an executive who's 50 years old and you said we're going to pay them until they're age 65, we're going to pay them 100 grand a year. Well, that's 15 years of 100 grand that you have to account for on your books today as a potential liability. So again,
Yep.
could drag down the books of a company. Again, at the end of the day, you're still paying for an inactive employee. So again, where's that money going to come from? Again, you have that problem. So then you go to the insured qualified sick pay plan. You can fund it with disability income insurance. You make tax deductible premium payments. So you're paying premiums, not benefits. Again, you look at from a benefit standpoint, it's 1% to 2% of their wages. So if you're making 100 grand, you might be paying a premium of 2,000. Versus if you're promising them 60%, you're paying 60,000. Again, so it makes a big difference there from an employer standpoint. Claim decision, again, for the terms of the policy, you're transferring all that claim risk off to another independent party. Plus, you're no longer paying inactive employees out of corporate funds. You're just using the insurance premiums to pay those employees. Once they become disabled, it's good for the company because those premiums aren't due anymore because they have waiver of premium. The employees know the plan and it's well communicated. And again, it also serves as that reserve requirement because you don't have the risk on your books. You're paying to shift that risk off to the insurance company.
Yep.
So really, it's the only affordable solution from an employer standpoint. You kind of go.
If we really think of what us at E4 and all the advisors on this call and that'll listen to the recording, it's finding that pain point, finding a potential problem. Again, hey, we've got or we want a qualified sick pay plan. Same thing in a buy sell. Okay, great. one of our 4 pillars that we really talk about is let us help you provide the liquidity. When you're on the hook for this qualified sick pay plan, again, why would you not pay the premiums to avoid paying the benefits?
Correct. Shift the risk to somebody else.
Yep.
And what portion of the risk, I mean, that's different between each business owner. And again, there's different methods to shift the risk in this instance. You can use group disability. Again, so if you have a larger group of individuals that maybe it's all employees that you want to cover, it's cost effective, easy to administer. It's a contract between the employer and the insurance company, not the insureds. Again, you can do it to all types of occupations. But then again, you can also class it out to give certain classes better benefits than others. But again, you typically are required at least 2 or 3 in the small group market employees, 100% employer paid. And the more you get, the higher, from a participation standpoint. Then there's just straight individual disability income. If they have one key employee they want to buy insurance on, the company can pay for that. Premiums are guaranteed. It's fully portable. You can really personalize the coverage and have a higher quality of a product. It is more expensive. And again, it can take underwriting. And again, disability is not the easiest product to underwrite. I think we do a good job here at E4 working with advisors doing the pre-underwriting side. So we have an anticipated outcome instead of a surprised outcome. But again, sometimes not all of our employees are the healthiest. So again, underwriting could be an issue, or you could use a combination of the 2 plans, or maybe you provide a layer for all employees and then have a select few that we want to provide an individual benefit for higher amounts, higher quality coverage. And again, we're going to talk about it in in upcoming months, but the guarantee issue program, you can go guarantee issue on an executive carve out down to 5 lives. So now you have the group for everybody, and now you have the individual on a guarantee issue basis for a core group of people. And now you have a plan with no underwriting, only done by a census, that really takes care of the needs of the employer, the employees, and more importantly, the key employees.
Absolutely. No, that's again, just offering that solution, offering that liquidity solution for a problem that exists. And again, some employers are going to say, yep, this makes a ton of sense. And others, hey, it doesn't fit the budget. We don't want to transfer that risk. And at least you've done your job as the advisor, bring it up. Hey, here's a gap and here's how we can fill it.
Correct. And if you are planning on paying somebody and you're willing to take the risk, you still have to have a written plan. I mean, that's the key part, because again, you mentioned the organization you don't want to get sideways with is the IRS.
Yep.
Again, so at least have a plan and have it written. It doesn't really cost anything to do that, to have it put into your minutes. But again, at least have that plan. So I'm going to kind of just do a quick synopsis of what does it cost the company? Because that's a lot of times, the pain point, Steve, is, from a cost standpoint. So if you don't have a qualified sick pay plan in, kind of put that on the far left here. Let's just say the company had pre-tax profit of 100 grand, after taxes, assuming 34%, tax bracket, they had net profit of 66,000. Well, if they said they're going to pay that employee 50 grand a year, that 50 grand comes out your net profit. So the company only ends up netting 16,000. Mm-hmm. That's not real good. You go to self-funded, same information, except for this time you do get to deduct the wages. So you take it off the 100,000. So your pre-tax profit is, 50, and your taxes are 17. Net cash flow 33,000, better than the 16, right? But then you look at, instead of paying 50,000, let's just pay that $1,500 insurance premium. Now your pre-tax profits, 98.5. Sure, you pay more taxes because you had, more pre-tax profit, but look at your net cash flow. I mean, it's double a self-funded plan, and 4 times just paying the employee outright.
I did a quick calculation. 33,000 is more than 16,000, and 65,000 is more than 33. So I did check your math there. Good job, Brady.
Yep. So again, you kind of take a look at it, what an insured plan does, and brings the risk down for the company. And sometimes you look at that chief financial officer, and that's really kind of where we're at the end here is end of the presentation. But I did have that question with a group back in Ohio that I worked with, and small engineering company, they grew over time. Had a key employee, and she went out for breast cancer. And I was just talking because I was talking about executive benefits and what we were going to do, and we were talking about buy-sell agreement and key employees, and I said, well, did you ever pay somebody? He said, oh yeah, well, so and so went out on claim, we paid her for 9 months. I go, did you have a written plan? The look in the CFO's eyes when I said that, he goes, well, what implications does that have? I said, well, how did you treat the payments? Did you deduct them as a business expense? And he's still looking. I was like, well, can we? I said, you're the CFO, not me. But again, the look in his eyes is like, and then the whole precedent, I said, well, would you do that for all your employees? And he's like, well, no, that's not our intention. I'm like, okay, then we need to put something in place because you want to make sure moving forward that this doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's kind of the nuts and bolts. It's a pretty simple process and really gets the employer thinking, from the standpoint of, hey, if I lose a key employee, what revenue am I losing and how can I replace them? That's the first part. Then the second part is, how can I pay those employees to provide it from a benefit standpoint and be advantageous to the organization?
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Brady. And well, I know we've got a question we'll get to in the chat box here in just a second. But while we're waiting to see if there's any other final questions, I'd like to remind you that today's brew and our full library of brews are recorded and shared on our brew blog on our website, e4.insurance. So a couple of questions that came in here, Brady. First one, how small of a company or group can write this type of plan? So how small of a group can have a qualified sick pay plan in place?
Well, again, is if you have an employee, so it'd be an owner and an employee, so you could be down to two. Yep. Owners typically aren't included unless you're in a C corporation, just from the deductibility of benefits, et cetera. But if this sort of qualified sick pay plan is not meant for a massive company, 3, 4, 5, 600 employees, because they can absorb a lot because their revenues are higher. They can absorb that cost more. It's really meant for that probably 5 to 50 life group that have a couple key people that if they're gone, it really affects the organization.
Makes sense. And one more that's come in before we get to our drawing here, and you kind of touched on a little bit with the C corp and owners, but are the rules for having a qualified sick pay plan in a business the same across all tax types? C corp, S corp, LLC, partnership, professional corp. You talked a little bit on including the owners, and that's okay in a C corp, really not in any of the others. But outside of that, is there any other big differences, or are they pretty much the same depending on the business type?
They're pretty much the same. It's just taxation. Again, and S corp owners, less than 4% ownership. I think it's 4. Again, it's just the taxability of it. Really in the S corp is where you have it, because if you're an owner, you're paying for your benefits with your own money anyway. Yep. So the deductibility side isn't there. That being said, in your buy-sell agreement, you're extending owner salaries or incomes for a period of time should be addressed in your buy-sell agreement. Again, because how do you want them, to be accounted, or do you just say, hey, when you're done, and you get the funds from buying out the company? So, that's where really would be addressed in the partnership agreement or buy-sell agreement, in terms of continuing in owner's wages. But for all other types, or non-owner employees, the qualified sick pay plan is what they would need to look at.
Well, that is fantastic, and a ton of great information shared today, Brady. Thank you very much. And now I think it's time we move on to our giveaway. So Brady, I'll ask you if you want to pick a number between 1 and 32.
All right. Well, we just had St. Patrick's Day, so that would be, we'll just take 17, Steve.
17. All right. The winner today is Grant Morgan. Grant, congratulations. Happy for you. Be on the lookout for a complimentary CE voucher and Starbucks gift card that will be coming your way from all of us here at E4 Insurance Services. So again, Brady, thanks for the content today. Thank everybody for joining. And I will remind everybody on next week's brew, we'll wrap up our monthly focus on key person insurance with Mason McKinney from Principal Life. Mason will discuss how to protect your business from the involuntary or voluntary departure of your top people and your options on how to reward and retain those high impact performers. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week on the brew.